Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, tipplers of the tech world. Welcome to your weekly dose of Tech Talking Tonic. It's time for the sweet elixir of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And browsing through the cool room, I can see a new toy for the serious gamer. Something to really immerse yourself in the experience. But you'll need to be prepared to open your wallet nice and wide for that one, folks. Now, we've got a revolution in cooking coming your way, and drone technology just gets cleverer and cleverer. Light as a feather and solar powered. Is there even any reason to come to land anymore? But coming into land right now, it's the pilot of this plane. It's Matthew Dickerson himself. What's new, Matt?
Well, I was impressed with your alliteration there when you start talking.
There was a lot, and I was really worried about getting tongue-tied.
You run that many T's together, you start to get into trouble. Well, we know before we've spoken about the classic, I've lost my phone, I've broken my phone, Mum, Dad, please send me some money. And we've seen that, and we actually haven't talked about that type of scam for a while. Obviously, lots of people listen to our podcast, and they now no longer fall for that. But I had a friend who told me about a story about their friend who got diddled out of some money, or their father got diddled out of some money, with the classic, I've lost my phone, Dad, please send me some money, but not with text messages, with voice.
Oh.
Yeah, and the voice was good enough, obviously, that Dad said, okay, this is my son I'm speaking to. You tend to think you'd know your son's voice, and I'm sure this person knew his son's voice very well.
Yeah.
But the voice was good enough to completely bamboozle. Speaking in real time, obviously there's a person at the other end typing away, madly typing, or has some phrase already written so they can copy and paste, and the voice gets translated into something that sounds good enough.
I remember we did a story about a year ago where you'd actually taken our voices and got AI to do its own intro using our voices. Straight after that, I was straight on the phone to Mum and Dad saying, look, we need to get some sort of question. You've got to ask a question. We talked about that. You ask a personal question that only I would know the answer to, even if it sounds like me, even if for all money you think it's me.
Or, that's exactly right. So I'd either have some sort of question, but if you had a code, you said, I'm going to say wobble dooble, then if you write that, type it, or somehow that message gets interpreted, then, Mum, Dad, wobble dooble. So I'd even just say, ask a couple of personal questions. Oh, remember on your 21st? Remember what you did there, James? That was so funny. Can you just remind me what it was you did, James? What do you mean, Mum? And then suddenly they hang up and go on to the next person who doesn't ask such a clever question. So some sort of personal question, I think, would be one. The other one, of course, is ring back. So I'll just run through this one very briefly. So this person got a phone call. Dad, I'm just at the phone shop. I've stuffed my phone. I had to use the phone at the shop to ring. That's why it's not my number that comes up. So you go, okay, I'll just ring you back on your number. Oh, you can't because my phone's broken. Look, just pull your SIM card out and put it in another phone there. You're at a phone shop, so put a SIM card in another phone, and I'll just ring you on that one there, and then we can go through it from there. Of course, you don't think about all that.
No.
When
that's way too complicated for what you're trying to do.
When your child's in trouble, then you're probably going to say, okay, so the first part of it was, okay, sure thing, I'll help you out, son, because it's my son. I'm speaking to my son. Then don't transfer the money to me, Dad. I'm here at the shop now. I'll put you onto the guy from the phone shop. He'll tell you his bank details so you can just transfer the money, and then I can walk out the door with the phone. I'll get it sorted out with you later. Okay, so another voice comes on. May well have been the legitimate person's voice. Yeah, how you going? Yep, I've got your son X here, whatever the son's name was, and I'll just give you the details, transfer the money, thanks very much. He rang his son maybe a couple of hours later. How you going? You got it all sorted now? Got sorted what? Yeah, the phone. What do you mean? I just spoke to you a couple of hours. No, I'm speaking to a couple of days,
Dad.
Yeah.
And then the penny drops.
Yeah, well, the penny didn't drop. The big bunches of cash dropped.
Yeah, goodness me.
I don't think that person will get their money back because if you do a transaction on credit card, there is some protection in place. If you do a direct transfer, which would have happened here, I'll give you my bank details. You've just talked to your son. I'm the trusted person in the phone shop that your son's just handed the phone to. oh, okay, I'll transfer that money to that bank account. So it's long gone, I would suggest, that money, but it's just another one to be aware of.
Yeah, and goodness me, anyone who's ever been broken into, there's that feeling of being violated and that someone has rifled through your personal things. In this case, that feeling of anger and frustration that how dare they go and steal my son's voice and lure me down into a trap. Yep. With my son's own voice.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. So be aware of that one now. So it's not just the text messages.
Don't we live in a new world, yeah?
Yeah, we do.
All right, well, we better get stuck into our stories for this episode. What a pain it is to lose your voice. Simple responses to questions or basic instructions become frustrating and near on impossible. Well, Apple has heard your complaints loud and clear and developed an app that, with the help of a little AI, will give you back your voice in an emergency and speak for you at request. Matt, this voice cloning app is a nifty little idea, but we've just had a conversation about how dangerous it is.
And you're right. And I wonder about how specific this particular problem is. So here I am, and I get this app on my phone that
It's very niche, isn't it?
It is. I can record my voice while I can still talk, because at some stage in the near future, my voice won't be operational again. Maybe I've got throat cancer. Maybe I've got some form of disease that's degenerative in my voice. Maybe for some reason I'm going to lose my voice. That is niche. That is pretty niche in terms of wanting to use this app. So you record about 150 different phrases. So on your phone, you'll come up with these different phrases. You'll say those phrases. Now, I think there's two reasons for that. One is to learn your voice, but two, it makes it much harder to take a random sampling of someone else's voice and play it to an iPhone to then replicate that voice, because it's unlikely you're going to find someone, if he's trying to steal their voice, someone that just happens to have had out in the public domain these 150 random phrases. So I think a part of it is that protection to try and stop someone stealing someone's voice. Once you do that, which that'll take a little bit of time, maybe 15, 20 minutes. You do that, you leave your phone then, it'll work away on that, take all that information. Hours later, you can then start to use it. Now, I've actually tried this. I didn't use my voice. I had a friend of mine go and do the recordings of their voice, do the 150 phrases, and then rang me and they spoke to me with their real voice. They said, this is my real voice. I assume it was anyway. And they said, now I'm going to start talking to you with my AI voice. So they typed things and said things, and gee, I had to listen.
Goodness me.
I had to listen, and if I hadn't have known that they were doing it, I would have gone, yep, that's them. And people ring you sometimes, and they've been busy, they've had a hard day.
Might be a bit distracted,
whatever. Their voice doesn't sound identical every time.
Yeah.
So to hear a voice and you go, yeah, that sounds like someone's voice, that's fine. You're not trying to pick up just certain differences or, gee, that was a funny inflection on that word. This mustn't be the person I thought I was talking to. That doesn't go through your mind, especially when you might be speaking in the car. You're driving along on hands-free in the car. The voice doesn't come through perfectly anyway. Or you're at home and there's a TV going in the background, or kids are running around. You're not hearing it in perfect clarity. So a little bit of difference there, that's probably fine. So I am intrigued by why Apple chose to go in this path. It just seems like accessibility, really. Is that the real reason you did this? It sounds like an interesting reason.
It sounds like they thought about, we can do this, so we're going to do it.
I think
let
so.
Other people work out why they're going to use it, perhaps.
Well, maybe that's part of it, but also they probably went, well, hold on, the only reason you do this is for some sinister purpose. So what can we come? Oh, I know, accessibility. That covers it. Who can be mean to a company that makes things better for people without accessibility or with some sort of form of accessibility issues? So it was quite fascinating. It was quite accurate. Play with it if you will. I'm just not sure how I'm going to use it on a day-to-day basis, but play with it if you will and see how you go with it.
Here's something to stimulate some conversation at your place. Matt, can you please pass me that can of worms over there? Cheers. Now, if I was to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, how common it was for people to share their smartphone PIN with their partner, would you guess that is more or that it's less common than not? I sense a frosty breeze building at the other end of the line here. You've Matt, you've got some stats coming in here that are going to have some couples brewing questions like, why does she insist on having my access to my phone anyway? Or, why doesn't he want me to have access to his phone?
These are the questions. These
Yes.
are the questions.
Are we going to be offering discount couples counselling after this?
Maybe some discount divorce lawyers might be more appropriate.
So there are definitely people who haven't shared their PIN with their partner, and there will be some that have. And then I'm thinking, if you've asked for your partner's PIN, does that mean you don't trust them?
Well, this is the
Or
thing.
if you haven't surrendered your PIN, does that mean you don't want to divulge anything to your partner?
I think it almost has to be volunteered rather than requested.
Yeah.
That's the tricky
but
one,
then
isn't it?
is it a bluff? Oh, you can have it, dear. Check it out.
If you want, just give it to me for a minute or two first.
Photos.
So in a survey, 51% of people said that they share their smartphone PIN.
51%. That's about half.
That's about half. That's right. And I'm fascinated by that. I actually thought it would have been a lot higher. Now, there was no information in this survey about how long-term the partner was. Maybe if you've got someone that you call your partner that's been your partner for a year, maybe the data would be different to someone that's been a partner for 20 years. So that would make sense. But 51% of people share their PIN with their partners. But then you start to look at some other stats around what else you might do with it. So, for example, 43% said viewing your partner's search history is common. So 43% supposedly go and have a look at the search history.
We don't trust each other anymore, do we?
No. I actually am quite comfortable sharing my PIN with my partner. Something might happen tomorrow. I might get hit by a bus.
Yeah.
Or I might be in hospital where I need someone to access something and I can't remember it. Maybe I'm trying to think of an obscure reason where I'm still able to function, but I can't remember my PIN. But just, can you grab my phone and go and look up something?
Bingo.
That type of thing.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I know my partner's PIN,
you
and I'm
last time
pretty
you
sure
checked.
she knows mine, but I can't be certain.
So then it starts to get more interesting when you start to look at location tracking. What do you do with location tracking? So there are about 25% of people who location track their partner. Wow. Now, this is the really interesting one, isn't it? Is it by request or by demand again? So
Yes.
if it's
Is it volunteered
That's
or
right.
is it by request?
if it's volunteered, it's like that's fine. And again, my phone can be tracked by my partner. Every of my kids can track where my phone is. And I don't have a problem with that because sometimes I'm going out for a bike ride and my wife goes, he's been gone for a while. I'll just see if he's still moving. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. So that's fine. But at no stage has my wife said, I want to know your location. That would be a little bit different. So the stats might be a bit different.
how
then.
it's broached.
That's right, exactly right. Now, we do know, unfortunately, there are a lot of DV situations where secret tracking has been put on someone's phone. So that's obviously not what we're talking about here. But in terms of just sharing that, and again, if you know or you choose to know about it, that's interesting. Now, we did something recently where it was my wife's birthday and I got one of my kids to come home for my wife's birthday. And so he was at home and I said, make sure you just keep sending mum a few text messages so that she thinks you're still where you should be, not at home. And he said, okay. He said, I better turn off my location tracking because mum might see where I am. And then, hold on, why are you at home? What's going on here? So he turned off that. But even that was a bit of a red flag because, he's turned off his phone tracking again. What's he doing there? Where's he at? And, of course, I had to play dumb with that. And then finally, my darling wife walked in and there's, what are you doing home? So you've got that sort of thing where as soon as it's not available, then you start to question, why aren't you sharing that? If you did share it in the past, it's a tricky one, isn't it? So,
Yeah, it is a very tricky one.
that's right.
Yeah.
So I suppose
there are
thing
no
is-
right answers for what you should do.
No, that's
There's
right.
just nervousness and cans of worms.
And it gets worse because you've got biometrics as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of partners do have their face or their fingerprints in their partner's phone.
I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
So having your partner have access by biometrics.
Yeah, that's right. So about 39% have their biometrics there. So if you've got the PIN,
39%.
so you kind of go 51% the PIN, that's fine. Well, it's not much different to having your face or your fingerprint, so it's a bit easier to get into.
Yeah, right.
But that means you're probably doing it regularly. Having the pin in case is one thing.
Yes.
But
But needing ease of access.
Correct. That's right. And one of the big things I find, even my kids do
palm sweating.
Even my kids do it. They've got the phone, they've been using the phone, and they always sit the phone face down.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, what are you hiding there? Why are you sitting it face down? The problem is you leave it face up, and busybodies, people are naturally curious. As soon as a phone makes a noise or vibrates or something flashed up on screen, people just glance across out there. Oh, you just got a text from James. What's that about? So the face down thing is interesting. But of course, then if you see it face down, you pick it up. You got biometrics, you got your face in there, you look at it, open. Oh, whoops, I didn't even mean to unlock it, darling. It just happened. So it's interesting. But I am fascinated by some of those numbers, but also fascinated.
Yeah, very interesting stats there.
Also fascinated by the conversations that go around those stats.
And I promise to stop texting members of your family too, by the way.
Thanks.
Keeping people safe through the Olympics has got to be a security nightmare. Enormous hordes of a mishmash of people from all walks of life and the eyes of the world looking on. It's a big chance to make a political statement for whatever cause is your flavour. So scanning the vast crowds to identify and isolate threats, well, that's got to be a tough gig. Probably an ideal job for AI, Matt.
It is indeed. And France has had some major terrorist attacks. In fact, if I go back to the 7th of January 2015, I landed in Paris on that day with my darling wife. We were on a holiday and we saw a lot of police cars going around as we were going in from the airport into Paris. And we didn't think much of it. We thought it was a bit strange, but that just happened to be the day of the Charlie Hebdo attacks. 12 people were killed at the Charlie Hebdo attacks.
That was a big deal.
It was a big deal, and the lockdown around Paris was actually pretty intimidating. We saw a lot of what I thought at the time were young kids. They certainly looked very young compared to me, but young kids on corners standing there with guns that looked pretty scary to me. And their fingers were just near those triggers there. So you really just look straight ahead. I didn't look sideways too much. One advantage was we found getting into various tourist attractions was really good because everyone was staying away. Everyone was very concerned after those attacks. And, of course, the people had all the Jesus Charlie, I am Charlie. Yeah. And we actually joined in a big, I don't know if it was a protest or a solidarity march, with a solidarity march just outside our motel. So we went, let's go and join in because, let's support the whole movement there. Yeah, but it really was the reaction from Paris, from French people, was extreme. But again, they felt like they were under extreme attack. We've already seen with these Olympics so far, there have been some incidents that have been...
Just some violations, personal violations.
Correct. Thefts and violations and a whole range of things. And that's really just, we're recording this before it's actually even started. So once it starts, it might get worse. So you've got a lot of activity from a security perspective happening, but AI has been called into the picture to help out. Over 1,000 or thousands, actually, several thousand CCTV cameras are monitoring so many different areas of Paris, and they've got real-time AI video surveillance. So they're looking for certain things. They're looking for weapons. They're looking for fights breaking out. They're looking for unattended luggage. That'd be a pretty scary one, especially considering that you'll have people milling around things like the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
Imagine an attack on the Eiffel Tower during the Olympics. If ever there was a time, I'm not giving advice here, by the way, if ever there was a time to attack that, then when there's huge crowds milling around, that would be a time to try and attack that.
Arc de Triomphe.
So many places, I suppose, that you could think of that you could make a real statement to the world if that's what you wanted to do. So they are using AI. They're using a lot of cameras around there. And again, some people are concerned, and I must admit, I'm just careful what I'm about to say here, but I don't really get some of the human rights organisations that are very concerned about this. I have this feeling that the safety of the crowd is more important than maybe some breaches of privacy.
Some personal privacy,
in an event like this.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the human rights watch organisations are saying that this is a concern because it'll be permanent, that AI will be employed across the city forevermore in a day after this one event. But I'm pretty confident that they're not going to throw all these resources in just an average day in Paris or an average day in France. So I'm saying my view, my personal view here, not a technology view, but is that I'm okay with some of those privacy breaches if it keeps the crowd and the community safer during this
If
time
I know that I
frame.
can head off to the main stadium and know that I'm going to get home safely as well.
Yeah.
It'd probably be worth it, I think.
Yeah, that's right, because some critics are saying it violates the GDPR and the EU AI Act. So there's some discussion around all of this. Hopefully they'll be able to run it for the Olympics and then they can have the arguments after the Olympics.
Yeah.
But it's something that we are just seeing so much technology in so many different areas. The Olympics, obviously, a classic sporting event that's been going for over 100 years. It just needs these levels of protection now to make sure that athletes and spectators are safe while they're there and can come home again.
Absolutely. Now, just how serious are you about your gaming experience? How much would you be prepared to pay to make your simulated F1 experience, for example, that much more real? I mean, if you're going to beat Max Verstappen, then you need to level the playing field. You're going to need the very best gear. Am I right there, Matt?
Absolutely.
Tell us about the latest in simulated racing.
There are some very cool simulated cockpits you can get.
Yeah, I've seen those. And they move.
They move, that's right. You've got the uncomfortable look and feel that a normal cockpit of an F1 race would be.
And surround screens.
All of that. Fantastic. But the steering wheel. The steering wheel looks pretty cool on a normal F1 car when the drivers pop it out, sit it on their car while they jump out and then pop it back on again. You go, that steering wheel looks pretty cool and looks pretty expensive as well because it's got a whole bunch of dials, and I'm still fascinated. These F1 drivers I still think are from another planet.
It's just the stereo system, isn't it? Like the graphic equalizer. And
right. Maybe more bass on that, thanks. But watching them 300 plus kilometres an hour down the straight, getting their braking marker absolutely spot on while they're changing controls on the forget about gears, changing controls to go into different modes of the car, and you see drivers doing things on the steering wheel, talking to their pit crew while they're doing 300 kilometres an hour. So they are definitely aliens. I'm convinced that the F1 drivers are not from this planet. They've got reflexes and skills that are not human. But the steering wheel does look pretty cool from my glimpses when I've seen it in the on-screen vision that you get.
Yeah.
But you can now go and get an accurate replica of the Mercedes Formula One team, and you can get that steering wheel, handcrafted carbon fibre shell. It's got 9 rotary dials, 12 buttons, 2 switches.
Expensive.
It's sounding expensive, that's right. 25 controllable RGB LEDs for all your telemetry data that's coming through, a 4.3-inch LCD screen in the centre. So you would see things just like Lewis Hamilton and George Russell in the Mercedes-Benz
level
team.
that playing field.
That's right. So if you're serious about your sim racing, then it seems reasonable that you would spend $2,500 on a steering wheel.
$2,500.
Now, if you said to me $2,500 for your cockpit, I'd go, that's expensive, but I can see that. I can see all that hardware.
I want to have a drink holder, I tell you.
That's right, at least 2. And non-spillable. So $2,500 for your cockpit sounds okay to me, but $2,500 for the steering wheel with all of those controls, with the 12 buttons, the 9 rotary dials, etc. I'm not sure that most racing car simulator programs, games, actually have enough facilities for all of those different controls.
I know. So you got a $2,500 simulating a steering wheel, but you don't have a game that can actually cope with that.
Possibly not. And I might be wrong there. Might be someone out there who will tell me that, we've got all these covered.
You're going to do your homework if you're going to spend $2,500 on a steering wheel for sure.
Well, that's right. So I do love the idea that you can get to feel like you're Lewis Hamilton, because most of us aren't going to feel like that. In fact, given the fact there's only 20 current F1 drivers, there's a lot of people
most
that
of us
aren't.
are not going to get the chance to sit in a Formula One car and actually do it.
Exactly right. But to have that feel, that steering wheel, and go, wow,
crazy.
look at this, how cool is this? So $2,500 sounds pretty cheap when you put it that way.
Now, smart home cameras have become very popular in recent years, but of course, the peril is that a hacker may gain access and therefore be able to identify members of the household. And it's worrying because it's never going to be for honourable purposes, of course. So the latest in home smart camera tech is quite a clever little trick. Human forms will be converted to stick figures. Completely unidentifiable and potentially quite comical, Matt.
I'm confused. I'm very confused about this. This is the researchers at the University of Michigan have decided that this is a way to solve some of the privacy issues. So we know we've done stories where hackers have gotten into cameras in kids' rooms, in the household, whatever.
It's a terrible, frightening concept.
It is. Someone out there randomly, or worse still, someone out there randomly transmitting it to the rest of the world of me walking through the house in my underpants while I'm trying to find my pants. So it sounds pretty bad. So replace them with stick figures. But the reason most people have cameras in their house or around their house is so that if someone breaks in, they can say, oh, look, I can identify them. So now we'll have, can you go and find a stick figure that looks just like that? Now, I'm assuming that at some point you can say, okay, turn off PrivacyLens and then see them, because I just don't understand the point otherwise. But then if I can turn it off, then if a hacker gets into my system, then maybe they can turn it off as well. So I'm confused. I love the technology. They've done a really good job. 99.1% accuracy in terms of turning humans into stick figures. So it's got a normal scene that it's looking at, and it picks up a human and it says, that's a stick figure, bang, done. 99.1% of the time it's right.
Yeah.
Great technology, but then again, I'm just confused about a whole range of things after that. Now, I do like the concept in some areas where they talk about the fact that when you've got things like autonomous vehicles or drones or even some public safety devices, then they can sanitize the data so you're not identifying humans. So I like that idea.
Yeah.
If it's in an autonomous car, it's just going stick figure on your left, stick figure on your right, not identifying who those people are or what they look like. So I get it in those situations. A drone delivery, it's delivering a coffee to me and it just sees a bunch of stick figures as it goes along and gives it to the right stick figure, presumably. I'm the stick figure that looks like I need a coffee.
With a mustache.
Yeah, that's the one. So I do like sometimes where people just do create stuff because they can. Maybe they did that in this case and then said, how do we come up with a practical purpose? I understand the sanitization concept, but I just don't understand how am I going to identify the bad guy as a stick figure. Police line up, put the privacy filter on. That looks like the stick figure that I saw.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it just a pesky bug? No, it's the latest in drone technology, folks. It's light as a feather and solar powered. There's probably not much reason for this little gizmo why it couldn't stay in the air forever, Matt.
Forever? That's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Well, nighttime. But, it's just not using a lot of power because it doesn't need to.
Well, it doesn't need to because it's small. 4 grams. So that was the first problem I had.
4 grams?
4 grams. I went, that's not a big drone. That's not going to deliver my coffee, is it? That's not going to have enough power to pick up my coffee and bring it to me. So it's probably not going to be used to deliver coffees. It's probably going to be used for things like communications, search and rescue operations, for example, spying. I don't know if that's the best thing for it to use it for.
Yeah, like stalking and spying. That's where my head went straight to. It's like you can just have a look at what's happening in your neighbour's window.
That's right, forever. You don't have to worry about coming back home and landing. So it's 4 grams in mass.
Till they get savvy and with a fly swat or something.
Maybe that's it. It's got tiny solar panels, and they've done a couple of things that are quite clever. They're actually using very high voltages. I'm talking about 6,000 up to maybe 9,000 volts out of this. The reason they do that is they want to have very low current to keep the heat down, so you're not wasting lots of energy and heat. So that makes sense. But they've obviously done a pretty clever job to have a device that's 4 grams in mass, so obviously not very big, and create from solar panels. Step up the voltage. It's not a big transformer it's carrying around, so they've done that thing that's pretty clever to step up the voltage. But then they've also used not a normal electromagnetic motor. Most people kind of understand Lenz's law, and you've got magnets and you've got electricity and you've got coils and you get a motor. Probably in a little bit more technical detail is what I've just run through there. This one uses electrostatic propulsion in the motor. So it's still using electricity, but with electrostatic charges changing, alternating to actually spin the propeller for this little drone. It is. I thought that was fascinating. Now, I don't know much about electrostatic propulsion. I assume that it's not practical to use that when we get to larger motors. So maybe it would only work in very small motors like this, because I haven't really seen any other motors look at the whole concept of electrostatic propulsion. But again, it makes it smaller and lighter. You're not putting magnets. Magnets have got mass to them, have got weight to them. So they basically alternate electrical charges to get this motor spinning. A little 10-centimetre rotor on top. So its full diameter is 10 centimetres. So not that big, as you can imagine, but big enough you'd probably notice it if it was spying on you. If it's hanging around the window at the front of your place, you'd go, I can see that there. It's only 4 grams, but I can see that there. Where they're at the moment is it can carry a payload of about 1.6 grams. So you've got to have your camera, communication device, whatever, pretty small.
Yeah, no bigger than 1.6 grams.
Yeah, that's for the moment. But they believe with this same model, they can get to the stage where they can carry 4 grams on a drone model, but 30 grams on a fixed wing model. So again, fixed wing, you've got a little bit more space to put your solar panels there, so a little bit more power you can generate. So again, put that up in the air and they can just keep flying around. Not as convenient as a drone because it's not hovering in one spot, but getting around an area to monitor something. So search and rescue might make sense from that perspective. And then I would imagine, let's think at the good purposes, I'd imagine search and rescue, you can have some sort of thermal imaging camera on that, transmitting that back to somewhere nearby. I can't imagine high power transmissions, and let it just keep going around looking for as long as you need. Don't know what they happen. You mentioned nighttime. Don't know what they have happen after the sun goes down. Maybe they've got some other way of harvesting radio signals for enough power. I can't imagine you've got a very big battery on there to store the power to keep you going throughout the night.
That'd be interesting, but most drone operators know that their time is limited while they're using their drone before they have to bring it in and recharge or send another one up. And I'm thinking, you said 10 centimetres? Yeah, so a small bird. I'm just thinking about what sort of birds might want to try and catch this and eat it. But this certainly presents itself as a possible meal.
It does, but it's big enough you'd notice it. 10 centimetres of a blade spinning, you're going to notice that somewhere. So it's not so tiny. The payload might be small, but the propeller, you're probably going to notice it somewhere.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
Quite fascinating where we're going, though, in terms of just all sorts of different technologies to be combined to come up with something like that.
This is worth a headline. Woollies are adding 9 EV Utes to their fleet, and they'll be servicing stores around Sydney. But what's more, the Utes are Aussie-made. Matt, I presume this is just a start. Fingers crossed for success here, but Aussie-made no less. I had no idea.
Well, just to clarify to Woollies for our international listeners.
Oh, sorry.
Woolworths for...
the nickname?
That's right. Woollies Woolworths is often called Woollies, and Woolworths is a supermarket, a large supermarket chain across the nation. So you've got, first of all, exactly right, manufacturing. Vehicle manufacturing in Australia. What a concept. So that sounds pretty good, but it's not quite as exciting as it sounds. And they're designed and developed in Western Sydney, but they're actually assembled overseas.
Oh, okay.
So we're kind of getting manufacturing.
Well, yeah, it's a start.
It's a start. But Woolies have ordered 9 of these electric utes, and I actually thought, what does Woolies use a ute for? I can imagine if there was some outdoors organisation that had electric utes.
I was just feeling dumb when I was thinking that, but obviously great minds think alike.
That's right, because I don't know that I see too many Woolies vehicles or utes running around at the moment and going, oh, there's another Woolies ute that I've just seen drive by.
Yeah, right.
What they use is fairly limited in that they use these to go and pick up trolleys in the car park.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I don't mind that. They're an electric ute. They've got a low range they need because they're travelling at 10 kilometres an hour, presumably around the car park. They would have an incredible length of time because at 10 kilometres an hour, you haven't got much air resistance. As you get to highway speeds, that's the main impediment to keep going forward in a normal electric vehicle is all that air resistance. At 10 kilometres an hour, there's not much of that.
But the other thing is they've got a lot of idle time, or you've got to turn the thing off and turn it on again,
Yep.
And so if you're electric, you don't need to worry about that idle time.
Don't worry about that. And a lot of car parks for supermarkets are underground or undercover at the very least. So you've got all those
fumes and stuff.
That's right. Yep. But again, you've got lots of cars in the car park anyway. But this is just something else to add to it. But it does. It'll be a lot of that stop-start. Perfect. Absolutely perfect for an electric vehicle to have that stop-start. So they've ordered 9. They've got potential to keep ordering more, assuming the trial is successful. So it's a Queensland-based company called the Ace EV Group. So I love the fact that they're saying, people in Australia say, if only there was a ute, I'd buy an EV because there are not many Utes available at the moment. Cybertruck probably isn't that common.
Go.
So now we're getting to the stage where it might be built initially for Woolworths, for their shopping trolleys, but why can't it be built for the farmers or the tradies or whatever else, whatever other people might need to use a Ute for? So step one, fantastic. And it's been a while since we've had manufacturing here, 7 years since we lost Toyota, Ford and Holden from our manufacturing shores. So again, not quite manufacturing here yet, but let's see how we go in terms of people
Could be the
catching
start
on
of
with this.
big things there.
Could be.
A cooktop needs so much energy to do its job. Heating anything is a major energy drain, so there are some who insist on a gas as a rule for their stove. We'll get a load of this, folks. Bound to raise an eyebrow from your house guests is a new battery-powered cooktop. Matt, is this thing going to have the guts, or is it going to be exclusively just for warming milk?
It might be just for show and tell, who knows? I'm a big fan of induction. In fact, the house that we're sitting in at the moment, I think it was probably 25 years ago. It would have been actually last century that we built this and we put an induction cooktop in. And everyone said, you're crazy. Gas is the way to go. Gas can get things heated quicker and all the rest of the things that people talk about gas. I was never much of a fan of having a flame with kids in my home. I'm never much a fan of just burning stuff inside the home. So we went induction. I love induction. I think it's fantastic. And it does heat up things pretty quickly. The stoves are still a bit expensive, but I'm surprised that we're 25 years later and we haven't all changed over to induction. But again, they're still pretty expensive. One of the issues that we're seeing as we go forward with electrification of the world is some people are concerned about some of the things in their household being electric and then not having access to electricity, grid outage, power failures, whatever. And I do know people who go off the grid. They're very proud of the fact they go off the grid, but they go off the grid by doing things like having a gas cooktop. And you kind of go, well, does it kind of defeat the purpose of going off the grid to then have to use gas? So some companies are now saying, there's some startups, more than one, that are saying, let's have some electrical appliances that you use around the home. But to take away that anxiety, that grid anxiety, let's come up with a new term, you've got a battery backup built into these devices. So you've got your induction cooktop, so you can cook away, essential to cook your evening meal. Suddenly the grid's out, you've lost electricity. Luckily, I've got my battery backup in my induction cooktop to keep cooking my meal.
How about that? Yeah.
It seems like a bit of overkill for a cooktop, but absolutely I can see this with a fridge, for example.
For sure.
If I can't cook my meal, I'm probably not going to starve to death in the time it takes for the grid to come back up. But in my fridge, it might be a bit of a pain if my fridge goes down and then I have to throw out stuff that might have sat there and started to warm up a little bit. So different items around the house.
Well, doomsday preppers have got to predict sort of prepare for the end of the world too. So, yeah.
Well, the problem is they might only last a few hours because the battery's not going to last a long time.
Yeah, but you can get charges, I guess, somehow, solar power charge.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So you're getting now a range of appliances that are not yet available, but again, startups are out there designing and prototyping these where you'll have batteries built into different things. Now, of course, what you can do is then feed those back into your house and use them as batteries for your house. And I thought about that. I went, well, why would I just buy one battery and plug that in for my entire house rather than have individual appliances? I suppose the main reason you do it is you've got a bit more control over that appliance. So my battery on my fridge is more important, so I want that to be prioritised rather than just I can still have the lights turned on. I don't care if I'm in the dark. I'd rather my milk was okay in the fridge. So I don't know. There's some products I look at sometimes and go, wow, that is a winner. That's going to be, everyone's going to have that tomorrow. And there's other products like this one that I go, that's interesting. I wonder if that'll really take off as the must-have product for someone building their new home tomorrow. And I like the concept. It's interesting, but I just still feel like one big battery to have as my house power or to get that extra solar power I'm generating as opposed to batteries distributed around the house.
We'll just have to see how this thing catches on.
Exactly right. It'll be interesting.
Here's a topic to get you thinking. Fans of 2001: A Space Odyssey may have something to say about this story. Now, AI is pretty clever in what it can do in trying to produce material for you upon your request. But in that, all it's thinking is directed by your instructions. The question is, will AI ever develop its own true consciousness?
Well,
Hal?
that's the question. Because what is consciousness? That's an interesting question. It's a really mysterious aspect of human experience. It seems pretty basic, you would think.
Well, it's about self-awareness, isn't it?
Oh, see, I don't know. If you say so, that's fine, but someone else might have a different interpretation.
Okay, all right, okay. We'll debate that term, but yeah.
And that's the thing. So, for a start, what is consciousness? Can AI develop consciousness? And this is the real question. Now, I remember one of the fascinating things that I remember from computer science at uni were more about the abstract rather than the programming. The programming got a bit tedious sometimes because it was always an assignment the next day that you had to have done. So it was like, get this thing done. But one of the things I remember from uni was the Turing test. Back in 1950, Alan Turing came up with this concept, and I think they used to call it, or he might have called it, the imitation game, but it was known as, or is known now as, the Turing test. And the idea is that if you have a person that communicates with another person or a computer, but communicates with them via text. So the idea is that behind a wall, you've got a person and a computer, and you can type something and they can type something back to you. If you can't tell whether the answers coming back are from the person or the computer, then that computer can think. Now, that was Turing's test back in 1950. And the idea there was that, well, we can't have someone talk to us because there's no computer that can do that, but we can have a computer type back to us. And then I started thinking about the modern world, and I went, well, you've got lots of times you're typing back and forth, maybe on social media. I have lots of conversations on social media with people, but I've never talked to them. I just have text exchanges back and forth. Wow, is that a person I'm having those exchanges with, or AI? And, of course, now we know that we've got AI that can produce a voice. So you could legitimately have a conversation now. And I think already as we stand today, if I had a conversation with something like ChatGPT or a human, it would be very hard for me to distinguish which of those two was with a human and which was with an AI tool. So it's interesting. And I've tried with ChatGPT asking about emotions and feelings to try and see if it can be obvious to me that, no, I'm dealing with something that has no empathy, no understanding of feelings. But the answers you get are still the type of answers you would get if someone was just being politically correct and very nice, rather than getting raw emotion. But there are people out there that's how they communicate. Yeah. So do we have consciousness? Will we get that? Will computers feel? Will computers possess a sense of self? I don't know. Maybe they do already. So mimicking brain function is the real challenge here for anyone that's designing AI. We've already agreed many times in the past that the brain's pretty clever and we do some pretty clever things.
We do.
Even though we don't really understand how that works completely. Getting to the stage where a computer mimics that, oh, gee, if the responses sound like that, what's the difference between fake it until you make it? Someone says, oh, I want to be really nice to this person, I'll just pretend and say nice things, compared to AI giving me answers that it thinks that makes it look like a human. Yeah, it's a scary area, isn't it?
It is a very scary area.
Once we get AI that can talk to us and we can't distinguish the voice, once we can get answers that come back that basically look like the answers, probably the only way, the other way you'd be able to tell is that AI answers you get back are always accurate and full of information. So everyone's got that friend that's a know-it-all, but you can stump them sometimes, whereas I'm not sure that you can stump AI because it's got access to, like everything. So, what year did the Berlin Wall fall? Well, my friend who's a know-it-all might get it pretty close, but AI would know exactly the date. So
we're just going to have to learn how to be really discerning. And I think, it comes down to what answers are real and what answers have got unreal information that have been scanned from a conspiracy website, for example.
Yeah, well, and that's an important part as well. But how do we know that? Because
how do you
we're
know?
relying on the information that comes.
I think society is about to regress in a big way. You can't trust anything you see or hear anymore.
See, hear, feel like it's a scary world out there. So, anyway, have that discussion.
Okay, predicting the end of days.
Have that discussion over the dinner table tonight. What is consciousness? Discuss.
And that, ladies and gents, is that for another show. Pack it, rack it, and stack it. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
Well, I do have to go and record my 150 phrases now, so just in case something happens to me, I'm covered. But also, maybe I could live on forever then. I could live on as an AI forever.
Tech Talk can go on forever and ever and
That's
ever.
right.
Fantastic. Well, I'm off to make a list of distractions and maybe find some places to hide for when the conversation comes up at my place about sharing smartphone pins, etc., etc. If I'm lucky, my wife will never hear this episode and the topic will never come up. But you cannot be too careful, folks. Thanks for tuning in again, folks. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson is a hand-reared podcast raised from a kitten with tender love and care to become the big, bold and brassy podcast that it is today. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you very well until next time when we return with another shiny new episode for you to enjoy and hopefully give you the head start to a better and brighter future. Until then, take care and we'll see you next week.